get ready, because we're about to travel way back in time, like all the way back to the Mughal Empire. We're going to be talking coronations, rebellions, a little sneak peek into the daily life of emperors. Oh, I'm so excited for this one.
Yeah, it's a period that really captures the imagination, full of political maneuvering and these like sweeping historical narratives.
Exactly. And, you sent over just the most incredible primary source to help guide us on this. Maasir-i-Alamgiri, this history book that chronicles Emperor Aurangzeb's reign. So we're talking 1658 to 1707. I mean, that's a pretty significant chunk of Mughal history.
Yeah, it's quite a detailed account, originally compiled in Persian from official records. So it really gives us a very specific lens through which to view Aurangzeb's time.
Okay, so let's lay out the map for our deep dive today. We're going to uncover some of the key events of Aurangzeb's rule, dig into the origins of this book itself, and then really grapple with its value as a historical source. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Sounds great. It's a great approach, especially considering that Maasir-i-Alamgiri isn't just like any history book. It was commissioned by Emperor Aurangzeb himself. Can you imagine having that level of control over how your reign is remembered?
Wow, that's right.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about who's telling the story. It's not some objective account, from a distant observer.
Yeah.
This is Aurangzeb curating his own legacy.
Exactly. And to add another layer to all of this, the original manuscript in Persian, it involved a whole chain of compilers and translators over centuries, and finally made its way into English thanks to Sir Jadu-Nath Sarkar, a leading historian of the Mughal Empire, published by the Royal Asiatic Society of Bengal back in 1947. So what we're reading today is a product of many hands and interpretations.
That's a really good point. Okay. So before we get too lost in the weeds here, I think we got to back up to the basics. What's the structure of this book? How is it organized?
It's structured as a chronicle, meticulously organized, chronologically, based on official records. Think of it as almost like a detailed diary of the empire.
Oh, okay. Okay, I can picture that. Like a royal scribe diligently, noting down everything that happens in the court. Okay, so where does this chronicle begin? What's the jumping off point for our understanding of Aurangzeb's reign?
Well, the book begins with Aurangzeb's rise to power, and there's no better place to start than the Battle of Samagar, 1658. This was a pivotal moment, a decisive victory against his brother, Dara Shikoh, in their fight for succession.
Oh, a brother against brother battle for the throne. That's got to be intense. What details does the chronicle give us about this battle?
Well, first of all, the book is incredibly precise with dates, even using both the Islamic and Western calendars, and it just shows you how meticulous the record-keeping was of the Mughal court, how crucial these records were to establishing their legitimacy and authority. As for the battle itself, it was a turning point. For Aurangzeb, Dara Shikoh fled. Aurangzeb had his first coronation shortly after, and then pursued Dara relentlessly across the Punjab.
Wow. Talk about seizing the moment. He didn't waste any time solidifying his claim to power.
Not at all. And the book really gives you a sense of how quickly things unfolded. This wasn't a slow, drawn-out transition of power. This was a whirlwind of events.
But I'm guessing his rule wasn't all smooth sailing from there. Were there challenges to his authority?
Of course. And that's where the Battle of Kajwa comes in, 1659. And it's fascinating because it reveals a side of Aurangzeb that, we might not expect, like his vulnerability to superstition. There's actually an incident where a superstitious belief almost led to the dispersal of his entire army.
Wait, really? That's incredible. He's known for being so strategic and calculated.
Exactly. And that's what makes this battle so intriguing. It shows that even the most carefully laid plans can be disrupted by the human element, belief and fear. But of course, in true Aurangzeb fashion, he managed to regroup his forces and secure his victory. It's a testament to his leadership, for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So even with the near disaster, he still comes out on top. What about his brother, Dara Shikoh? Was he just going to accept defeat and fade into the background?
Oh, definitely not. Dara Shikoh was a persistent threat. And the chronicle details his multiple attempts to regain power. He fled to Sind, he forged alliances with local rulers, but ultimately he couldn't reclaim the throne. And it really gives you a sense of the vastness of the Mughal Empire and how these power struggles played out across, such a large and diverse landscape.
Okay, so we've got Aurangzeb on the throne. But it sounds like there were a lot of forces trying to pull him down. How did he solidify his power and control?
That's where his second coronation comes in, 1659. And Maasir-i-Alamgiri describes it as this grand affair, full of symbolism and really meant to cement his authority. New coins were even minted to mark the occasion.
A little Aurangzeb is in charge. Reminder for everyone. Smart move. Did he make any big changes once he was firmly established?
He did. The book mentions several edicts issued by Aurangzeb, and one that really stands out is the banning of the Persian New Year celebration. And, it reveals a lot about his approach to governance and his desire to shape the cultural landscape of the empire.
Huh. That's a pretty bold move, especially given how influential Persian culture was in the Mughal court. It seems like he wasn't afraid to make these sweeping changes. What happened to Dara Shikoh after all these failed attempts to regain power?
Unfortunately for Dara, he and his son were captured, and the chronicle details their fate. And it's not a happy ending. This part of the book, provides a glimpse into the Mughal justice system and how Aurangzeb dealt with those who challenged his authority. It's a pretty stark reminder that, this was a time of ruthless power struggles.
So, not exactly forgiving ruler. But the book isn't just about battles and political maneuvering, is it? Does it give us any insight into Aurangzeb, the person, beyond the emperor?
It does, and perhaps one of the most surprising sections is the account of Aurangzeb's pilgrimage to Kashmir in 1665, and it really paints a very different picture of him, one that focuses on his, personal piety and religious devotion.
A pilgrimage to Kashmir, that's quite a change of pace from battles and coronations.
It is. The chronicle goes into detail about his acts of charity, the distribution of funds to the needy, and his commitment to religious observances during the pilgrimage. We see him not just as an emperor, but as a man of faith.
Wow. It's fascinating how these different aspects of his personality emerge throughout the chronicle. He's not just this one-dimensional figure. Now, we can't talk about the Mughal Empire without mentioning Shivaji, a key figure in Indian history. Does he make an appearance in the Maasir-i-Alamgiri?
He does. The chronicle mentions Shivaji's submission to Jai Singh in 1665. It's a brief mention, but it speaks to the complexities of the Mughal Empire, the constant maneuvering for power and alliances.
Right, it's like this intricate web of relationships where allegiances could shift at any moment. Speaking of shifting power dynamics, a major event occurs in 1666, the death of Shah Jahan, Aurangzeb's father. How does the chronicle handle this transition?
Well, it recounts the aftermath of Shah Jahan's death with a focus on Aurangzeb's personal response. We see his mourning, his acts of charity in his father's name, and his emphasis on religious duties during this period. It's a very personal and intimate look at his grief.
It must have been a time of, just great upheaval, both personally and politically. Does the book mention anything about changes in his policies or his approach to governance after his father's death?
It does, and one event that stands out is the destruction of the Kesho Rai temple in Mathura and the construction of a mosque in its place. This is a significant event, one that reflects Aurangzeb's commitment to a particular vision of Islamic rule.
Yeah, that's certainly a controversial move. Even today, it speaks to the complexities of his reign and the way he wielded both political and religious power.
Exactly. And this event has been interpreted in many ways, and it's important to remember that we're looking back at it through the lens of history. It's a part of Aurangzeb's legacy that continues to be debated. But before we go down that rabbit hole, there's another event I think we should touch on. The Jat Rebellion in 1669.
Ah, yes. A reminder that maintaining control of a vast empire was a constant struggle. What details does the chronicle give us about this rebellion?
Well, it highlights Aurangzeb's decisive actions in suppressing the uprising, and it shows how he dealt with threats to his authority. It also reminds us that his reign wasn't just about grand events and sweeping policies. He had to constantly put out fires, so to speak, to maintain stability.
Sounds like being emperor was a full-time job, with no shortage of challenges. Speaking of challenges, the Maasir-i-Alamgiri hints at some intrigue within the Mughal court itself. There's a point where Prince Muazzam, Aurangzeb's son, falls under suspicion. What happened there?
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting episode that, shows the delicate balance of power within the imperial family. The book talks about rumors and accusations that led to Muazzam's temporary disgrace, but eventually there was a reconciliation with his father. It gives you a glimpse into the inner workings of the court, where suspicion and rivalry could arise even within the closest of family bonds.
Wow, it's almost Shakespearean, this drama unfolding within the Mughal court. Were there any other significant figures at court during this time? People who wielded influence or shaped the course of events?
Oh, there were many. But One death that stands out in the chronicle is that of Danishman Khan in 1670. He was a key figure in the administration, and his death led to a series of appointments and shifts in power. It just shows you the constant flux
Right.
and competition for influence within the Mughal court.
Okay, so we've got intrigue, power struggles, family drama. It's all happening within the palace walls. But what about life outside the court? Does the book offer any insights into the experiences of, ordinary people during Aurangzeb's reign?
It does. And one event that stands out is the devastating famine that struck the Deccan in 1684. And it's just a stark reminder that while the court might be focused on power struggles, real people were facing hardship and suffering.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that this famine had a huge impact on the empire, not just on a human level, but also in terms of, its political and economic stability.
Sure. Absolutely. And the Chronicle reveals how this impacted military campaigns and even Aurangzeb's ability to, project his power in certain regions. It's a really important event to consider when understanding the broader context of his reign.
It's a good reminder that history isn't just about emperors and battles. It's about the everyday lives of people who are affected by these grand events. Does the book offer any other glimpses into the lives of those outside the court?
It does, and there's a fascinating story about a peasant uprising in the Mathura district in 1669. And what's interesting about this story is that it highlights a different side of Aurangzeb. He actually intervened personally to ensure the peasants were treated fairly and even took steps to alleviate their suffering.
Wow. That's not the image of Aurangzeb that usually comes to mind. It shows that there were layers to his personality, a sense of justice and compassion that might be surprising given his reputation for ruthlessness.
Exactly. And this story really challenges us to consider the complexities of, historical figures and the dangers of reducing them to simple labels.
I'm really intrigued by these stories that reveal kind of like the human side of these larger-than-life figures. Does the Chronicle offer any other anecdotes like that?
It does, and there's one that I find particularly touching. It involves an old man and a water mill. It might seem like a small detail, but it speaks volumes about Aurangzeb's willingness to listen to the concerns of his subjects, even in seemingly insignificant matters. He actually steps in to address this seemingly minor injustice, and it shows a level of concern for his people that we might not expect.
Oh, I love that. These stories, they add so much depth to our understanding of them. It's like getting a glimpse behind the curtain,
Yeah.
seeing the man behind the emperor. But now I think it's time to kind of step back and consider the Maasir-i-Alamgiri itself as a historical document. We've talked about its origins and its detailed accounts of events, but how should we approach it critically? What are its limitations as a source?
That's a crucial question. And it's something we need to keep in mind as we delve deeper into the book. The biggest thing to remember is that this chronicle was written under Aurangzeb's patronage. It was commissioned by him. So it's likely to reflect his perspective and potentially present a sanitized version of events.
Okay, so we can't just take it at face value. We need to read it with a critical eye, understanding that it might not tell the whole story. What other limitations should we be aware of?
Well, one thing that stands out is the lack of focus on economic and social history. The Maasir-i-Alamgiri, it primarily focuses on political and military events. It's a top-down view of history. And it leaves us wondering about the experiences and perspectives of those who weren't part of the court.
It's like we're only getting half the picture. We need to consider those missing voices, those untold stories, to get a more complete understanding of this period.
Exactly. It's a reminder that history is always multifaceted and that no single source can capture the full complexity of the past.
All right. I think we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've got a good grasp of the Maasir-i-Alamgiri, its origins, its structure, and some of the key events that it covers. But this is just the beginning.
Yeah, we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to uncover as we continue our journey through this fascinating chronicle.
And that's exactly what we'll do in part 2. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the reign of Emperor Aurangzeb and explore the historical significance of the Maasir-i-Alamgiri.